that's the starting point. So from a fretboard standpoint, if I'm looking at the Lydian mode, then we're going to say it's going to be here with the Y stands for the Lydian. So I could think of it as the fretboard as this note, that node, that point within the system is always going to be Lydian or absolute mode number 4. And then you can also think of it from a scale. If I build the scale from there, I can build my formula from that point and continue on with my formula and build out the formula. And I can also build then my intervals from there. The intervals are going to be a problem though, because I want to keep it as absolute mode number 4. And the interval is going to say something like if I say this point over here, how far away is that? 5, 4. The interval is going to want to say that's a 4 note away. I say 4 note away. Most people don't. It's 4 note away. It's going to be a major third. So it's a major third distance. That 3 doesn't stand for the distance. It stands for the relative scale degree, which means I have to make that the 1 if I'm thinking that way and say that this is the third of the set of notes. What would I rather do, precursor, when we get to there? I'd rather say, hey, look, let's not make this head the head of a kid. If you got the 10-foot basketball hoop, 3-foot kid, let's not measure counting the kid's head to the top of the hoop, his head being foot 1, 8 feet away. No, from the top of the head. I don't need to renumber this to measure, in other words. How far should it be? It should be 2 modal half steps, right? Which 2 modal half steps is what I'm going to call it. Which if you made that the 1 is always going to be 1 number off from a coding standpoint, off by 1, plus 1 would give you the third from a scale degree distance. So again, I'll talk about that more later. You can follow the logic on that if you want. You don't have to use that terminology, but it might help you to just be aware of it once we get to scale degrees. All right, so then we can do this all the way across. And so we can have the Phrygian applying that formula to every 12 notes in the musical alphabet. What's the next one? We've got Mixolydian, kind of like the bluesy one here. We'll talk about why later. But all we're going to do is if I want to make the related one, I'm going to say, where was it? This is going to be the 5. So if I take this number and system, same collection of notes, and I take the 5, I'm going to say that this is the 5 mode, which is, I would call the Mixolydian mode. So we're going to go down and say, okay, now we're going to make that. I'll put that first. I don't want to rename it, but from a scale degree position, they would rename it. I want to still call it mode number 5 and keep that constant. And then we're going to say that's going to be an 11. And then we start the formula from that point down. So it's whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. And we're going to start from this whole, right? 11 plus 2 is 13 minus 12 is 1. 1 plus 2 is 3. 3 plus 1 is 4. 4 plus 2 is 6. 6 plus 2 is 8. 8 plus 1 is 9. 9 plus 2 is 11. And then we can apply that formula all the way across. And what's the next one? The next one is Aeolian. This is the big one because this is the minor key. So in Western music, they kind of came to the idea that they just like major and minor for a certain time frame, and they kind of threw all the other modes under the bus. Right? So we have all of our naming convention is based off major and minor. Again, I'm going to suggest that that's not what we would like to do optimally at this time, because I would like to name my chords based on the modes, because that gives me a position on the fretboard. So the minor key, what am I going to do? It's the Aeolian mode. So what are we going to do? We're going to take the 6. So if I take the 6th of here, from the major to make the relative, the 6 was an A. If I start from the A and apply the formula from that point, from after the 6, then we would get the same collection of notes that we had with the major key. So we start with an A, which is a 1, plus 2 is 3, plus 1 is 4, plus 2 is 6, 6 plus 2 is 8, 8 plus 1 is 9, 9 plus 2 is 11, and 11 plus 2 minus 12 gets us back to the 1. Right, so that's going to be the minor key, and remember that the minor key is still just another mode. Major and minor, they're trying to hide it, I guess. They don't like the modes, the Greek names, Ionian and Aeolian, but they are just 2 of the modes, and they're related, which is important to know because that'll help out to go back and forth between them. So then we have all of the other minor. So you can build all of the other minor with the same process. Pick the note, every note in the musical alphabet, 12 of them, and apply that formula to it is one way that you can look at the minor. And then we have the Locrian, the weird one. It's weird because it has a flat fifth in it. So we'll talk about that later, which makes it a little unstable, I guess it would be the term. So we're going to say this is going to be the B. So if I want the related mode, how do we pull that? We just say that's the 3. So the 3 is going to be the starting point. This is called mode number 7. It's the one with a dot, which I'm having represent the diminished, which we'll talk about later. So I would still like to call it the 7 mode, but they're going to want to renumber it as the 1 if you think about it from a scale position. And so then we start from the 3, and then we apply the formula out from the 7, right? Which means that's the end of the formula. So you have the 1, which takes me back to the C, right? And again, notice that these positions between the numbering system, if you think about them as absolute numbering system, will always be the same. So notice we have I'm on the B, the 3. The 3 is always going to be 1 half step to go to this to this position, which is going to be the Ionian, right? If I think about it as I'm in the Ionian position, what happens to be a C, Ionian plus 2 is going to get me to the mode number 2, which is the Dorian, which in this case is a D. Mode number 2 Dorian plus 1 is going to get me to mode number 3, which is Phrygian, which in this case is an E, right? And so on and so forth. The same happens up here, right? It's just now I'm on the 6, but if I looked at the 7 here, here's the 7, it's still going to say plus 1, right? 7 plus 1, meaning the Locrian, if you name it always Locrian or always absolute mode number 7, is always going to be a half step to get to the Ionian, right? Whereas if you rename it as a relative position, now you have to memorize the distance between each step. You have to rename the distance. You don't need to do that if you just memorize the absolute distances. Then you can intimately know the distances between each of the nodes. That'll give you way more flexibility. Causes some naming convention problems, but I'll talk more about that later. So then we can copy this all the way to the 12 intervals. So if you look at this could be useful, this table, because of course now you can kind of map this out and you can look at any of the collection of notes and any of the 12 keys, and you can look at any of the collection of notes making any of the 7 notes within that collection the tonic, and you can kind of compare and contrast them. If you see it in Excel, you can actually hide some of the cells to combine them. Remember that practically one of the things you want to be able to compare and contrast are the collection of notes that are relative, as we did in this column. It doesn't work on every column, but we did it on this column, the relative ones, because those are the ones you can easily switch between if you're playing like the guitar. You want to like maneuver around between the Ionian to the Dorian to the Phrygian. All you have to do is shift the tonic. All you have to do is shift the tonic. Or you want to learn the parallel ones, meaning you're going from the C Ionian to C Dorian to C Phrygian to C Lydian to C Mixolydian. That means the tonic stays the same, but you're going to a different mode, which results in a shape that's parallel. It's not diatonically, not the same notes, but it's all the same shape. And that will give you a different feel, like in the blues, typically the 1-4-5 not being same diatonic, but having the same shape, which is going to give you that distinct feel, in that case with the 7, the dominant 7 in it. All right, so that's going to be the general idea. This can be overwhelming, but remember, when it comes down to it, what are you trying to do? You're trying to remember this one shape. I don't care how you do it, right? Whatever cage system, five shapes per fret, whatever you want to do. But as you do so, remember 3 notes per string, whatever you want to do. But as you do so, memorize not just the notes or not even primarily the notes, but the relative position. And don't start to think, well, if I remember the relative positions, that's only going to allow me to play in the key of major. I want to play in minor, I want to play in Dorian, and I can't do it if I remember the relative positions because they change when I go. No, they don't. They don't have to. Keep the number system the same. Make it absolute number system. Those are the name of the modes. Then you can know the relationship between all of them. You can copy them up and back. The shape, the square will be the square no matter what. Ionian's always the top of the square. The back, this is Phrygian, is always going to be back here. You can come up with stories to remember the shape, which we do in some of our presentations and whatnot. They're static. They always are the same. So if you keep the numbering system the same, you will be able to memorize the fretboard way faster. And then all you have to do is bridge the gap for the naming conventions that people are going to want to do when they switch scales, which you can see some people have already kind of dealt with by doing things like the Nashville number system. Let's think that through so that we can understand it exactly what's going on and be able to code switch between the most effective way to visualize the fretboard and the most effective way to communicate that visualization.